After viewing this video on the handsaw, you will be able to identify safety concerns and rules when using a handsaw, identify the two main types of cutting teeth, also how to get started in your cuts, demonstrate the correct mechanics for using a handsaw, use the reflection of the saw to evaluate the squareness of your cuts, learn to listen to the saw cuts to adjust pressure and speed near the end of your work, and lastly, the care and protection of your tools. Today we're videotaping a short session on using handsaws. We're covering some of the safety aspects of it, also the different types and any kind of procedure that we might use to be able to be in a safe position, to be able to use square cuts, to be able to make sure our cuts are plumb. Some of the things you might learn through it so that you can do a good job on the site to it. One of the first things as we do anything in the shop is safety first. In this, one of our primary safety is our safety glasses. So we have any kind of dust, any kind of debris or anything maybe being blown around or anything like that, we have protection from that. So safety is number one. Second thing here as far as safety is the sharpness of our hand saws. Indeed, they do have a sharp point that's filed to them, so anytime that we would actually run them across our finger accidentally or our hand or any other part, a knee, something like that that might get in the way, they do have the potential to cut us, and so we want to be careful as we go forward with that. For this demonstration today, we simply secured our wood or our cutting material in the vise. We can actually use the bench and clamp it, or if we were using a sawhorse, we can also clamp to the sawhorse, making sure that our waist cut is over the supported area is very important to it. If we don't, then what's going to happen is our structure or our wood will bend, therefore pinching our saw, giving us a difficulty to finish our cuts. Although there's many different types and styles of saws, what we're going to do is concentrate on two different cutting teeth today. One is the cross cut and one will be the rip style. They are just as they say. One is intended to cross cut across the grain, where the other is intended to run parallel or with the grain. And the design of the teeth is specially designed so that it actually deals with the sawdust and getting it out of your kerf and out of your cut. Because of the profile of the teeth, it's hard to get started on your cut, so generally we use a thumb, the side of our thumb up against the side of the blade of the saw. Once we locate it to where we need to, many people desire to start on the back stroke of their cut, but all the while I'm actually balancing it with my thumb until I get my saw through the cut, so I feel comfortable that I can let go and stay in line of the cut. Once we've got our saw curve started, we've got our thumb, we've used our thumb for a guide. Now the proper ergonomics is being used to keep the saw cut. If for some reason my elbow is out, then you can see here we now begin to torque the saw, and we'll often get a little vibration every time we come back through. So the key to it is that I keep not only on my mark that I want to cut, but I keep my elbow, shoulder, everything in perfect alignment with the saw coming through. Then I can limit the vibration that I have coming through the saw. If I get to go out, now I get trouble trying to keep my saw in a straight line, or if I move myself in, now actually what I'm trying to do is bow the saw through the cut. So the whole goal is that my saw stays in line with my arm, forearm, shoulder, elbow. So now I can get a nice smooth cut as I'm going through my stalk or whatever I need to cut. Once we get our saw started, one of the things we begin to look for is the angle of reflection on the saw from our wood stock. If for some reason now that reflection becomes obtuse angle, then I know that my saw is not plumb with my cut, and also I'm falling off my straight line. So the goal here is that this line would actually look like it's actually just extending right through the saw and the face of the saw itself. So if for some reason then that I get off angle to it, the angle of my reflection changes. So I can begin to use this as one of the tools to making sure that my technique, my alignment is all in place like it should be. Now that we've talked about some of how to get started, also how to use the reflection of our saw for squareness and plumb, we're going to use one other technique to help us finish out our cut. As we go deeper into the wood, the sound, the tone is going to change as we go farther. Once it changes to a certain place, then we begin to learn we're very, very near the end of our cut. At times we're going to apply some pressure, and at that point we're going to lighten up on the saw and the technique so that we don't actually splinter out the stock or bust out the stock on the back side. Listen for the different tone and pitch as we go through the cut. Because of the sharpness of the teeth, and we're trying to maintain that for as long as we can before it has to be resharpened, there's a couple things that we can do. Some of the saws actually come with a sheath type material that will actually slide over, protecting the blade and also protecting you from being cut. Another option that we have is going into a storage, and a lot of times we'll put the teeth down to the wood. That way it protects people from going into the toolbox, but also protects the teeth as well. All right, let's review quickly. We have a couple things that we talked about today, two different styles of cross-cutting. We talked about the safety that was needed in doing any kind of cutting, shop work, anything like that. We also talked about the technique to get started with our thumb, and we also talked about the ergonomics or the follow-through with our hand and line, sort of like that locomotive type thing. A little bit with the sound as we finished up, and lastly we looked at the idea of the care, how we're going to store our saws and to be able to use them over and over again.